Now the last tool we're going to take a look at is called a Google Form. And we can get to that by clicking on New, come down to More, and choose Google Forms. This could also be called Google Forms/surveys because one of the things that allows us to do is collect data and information from people by filling out an online survey. So let's go there now. When you come to the form screen, it will start and look something like this. We'll go through each of these steps so you're familiar with what these options are. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to title the form. So we'll go ahead and click up here and we'll choose to call this Practice Survey. We can also give this a form description. We'll go ahead and say this is feedback, field trip feedback, we'll call it. Okay, so that's just to get us started. Now the next thing we see here is we see a question. This is kind of just a starter for us to get us started on creating our questions. Now in this particular case, we are creating a survey, which means that there are no right or wrong answers. There is a way to set up forms to do more of a quiz, and I'll show you where those options are later. But for now, we're going to just view this as a survey to give you an idea of the options that we have available to us. So we have a spot here where we can type in a question. Over here on the right, we've got some options on what that question will be. Short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, checkbox, drop down, linear scale, and so on. We also see, if we click off of that, where we'll put in our options for their survey answers. Over here, we've got some other options. This is when we're ready to add a new question. We can add a title or a description, add an image to a question, add a video to a question. You can add a section. I'll show you that in a minute. But essentially, it just breaks down questions into different sections just for organization. You can make a question required or not. You can delete a question or you can duplicate a question. So let's jump in and actually create one question. So over here, we've got our options, and we're going to choose short answer. Now you may have something here that says type answer here or type question here. Go ahead and delete that out if you have that. I'm going to click in here, and our question is, what is your name? And again, if you had something in there, just highlight over it and delete it out. Now the next thing we need to decide is if this is required or not. This is one of those things that's really up to the developer of the survey. Is it something that you have to have somebody answer in order to get your data? For example, if you were doing a survey about gender, you would have to have them answer the question, are you male or female? If it is more of an optional type of question, don't require it. In this case, I'm not going to require that. So we have our first question here. We're going to go ahead over here to where it says add question, and I'm going to choose a second question. Now, a second question drop down over here, and once again, we have our choices for what kind of question this is. In this case, we are going to do a multiple choice. So we're going to choose multiple choice, and my question is going to be, which group were you assigned to at the zoo? Which group were you assigned to at the zoo? Now, I'm going to pause here and type this in myself. Again, as a reminder, you guys should be following along and creating your own questions and working through these steps. This is one of those tools within the Google Suite that people don't typically have experience with. So make sure you're typing in your questions and you're following along with me. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my question now. Okay, so there's my question. My first option is the red group. I hit enter so I could get a second option, the blue group, and the green group. Now, obviously, I know that these were what the groups were. I don't need an other here because as the teacher of this, I know that those were the only groups. But we'll talk about other in just a minute here. We're going to go ahead and add a next question. This one is going to be a checkbox. Now, the difference between these two, obviously, other than the way they look, is this one you can only choose one answer, and this one you can choose multiple answers. So I'm going to go ahead and set up this question, then we'll talk a little bit more about the difference between these two. My question for this is going to be, which of the following exhibits did your group visit? Which of the following exhibits did your group visit? Okay, so our exhibit options, our option 1 is going to be elephants. Our next option is polar bears. Next, butterflies and monkeys. Okay, so before I go on, let me explain. The idea here is that they could have visited more than one of these exhibits, so this gives them the opportunity to choose more than one of these boxes to select. This one up here, they were not a part of more than one group, so they have to choose just one. That's the biggest difference between these two. And the very important difference is, can they only choose one, or should they be able to choose more than one? Now, it's really important to match the correct question with your question type. I often see people use this kind of question when there really is only one answer. And vice versa, I've seen the same, where people will only allow them to choose one, when in reality, the question and the way they asked it could allow somebody, or should allow someone to answer more than one answer. For example, this, if someone said, what do you like on your pizza? You may choose one option, or you could choose 10 options depending on what you like on your pizza. This is more of a, you were either this or this or this. There is no additional options. You can only choose one. So just be sure that you are matching the correct question to the question type, or it's very confusing to people. Two other points on this. One, they may have visited more than these 4. So for this kind of question, it's a good idea to add an option for other and allow people to go ahead and type in an answer if they went to something other than what you have allowed them to choose. So for a question like this, I'm going to go ahead and add in other. If for some reason you needed to edit any of these, you can click right inside of there. If you choose to delete any of them, you can click the X right there. Now, before I save this question and go on, for this kind of question, because they can choose more than one, it's a good idea to let them know that. So after this question, I'm going to say, choose all that apply. It's a good idea to let folks know that so they understand that they are allowed to choose more than one. It may seem obvious to you because they're check boxes, but not everybody's familiar with surveys. So again, just to recap, this kind of question, multiple choice, allows you to choose just one. Check boxes allow you to choose more than one, and make sure you're thinking about your question and what makes the most sense to use. All right, we're going to come down here a little bit. Again, I'm not going to require this one, but I am going to add an additional question. Now for this one, I'm going to choose a linear scale, and this is going to give me kind of a sliding scale if you want to see kind of on a scale of 1 to 5, or you could change that scale if you wanted. How did you feel about something? So I'm going to go ahead and add in the question right now. Okay, and the question is going to be, please rate your enjoyment of the field trip to the zoo. Please rate your enjoyment of the field trip to the zoo. Go ahead and type that in. Okay, I wrote in my question, and now I need to give them some labels. So what are we considering a 1 on this scale, and what are we considering a 5? So my 1 is going to be not much at all, and my 5 is going to be I loved it. Okay, so now we have our 4th question. So once again, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. Our last question is going to be kind of an open-ended question. I just want to show you, if I add a section, what it looks like. All it does is it gives you a little bit of a space, and it's labeling this as section 2. If I changed my mind and decided to switch it back, I can click this area here and say merge with above, and it puts it back together again. All right, so I'll go ahead and add my question back in again. This question is going to be paragraph. So this is kind of similar to the short answer up here, except we're giving them more space, and it says long answer text. So our question here is going to be, do you have any other feedback about our trip? Do you have any other feedback about our trip? Go ahead and type that in now. Okay, so I typed in my last question here, and now we have this as our paragraph question. So just to review quickly, we now have 5 questions: short answer, multiple choice, checkbox, linear scale, and paragraph. Of course, we could continue adding questions, add a different section, and so on if we wanted to do that. But let's change gears a little bit here, and let's take a look at the look of our survey first. So in this upper right-hand corner, you'll see a button that looks like an artist palette. If we click on this, we're going to see some options for changing our theme. Now we've got some colors here that will change, obviously, the color of things, as you can see. Okay, and you can also choose to change the image that's at the top here by clicking on Choose Image. Now if I do that, you can see a whole bunch of images pop up here that I can choose, and that will replace the color or image banner that's at the top here. Now just for fun, I'm going to choose Just Kids. And I can see a bunch of different options here. I'm going to go with the ladybugs and choose Select. And that will replace the banner up here with whatever you chose. And you could continue to change the theme color. You could choose different colors by clicking here. You can change the style if you want, and so on. So all of these changes here will change the look and feel of your survey. Now over here, we can actually preview our survey. So if I click on this, it'll take us to another window and we'll see what it will look like for other people to see this. And of course there's a submit button in this. So if we had looked at this and we decided this isn't exactly what I wanted, or we decided we wanted to add more to it, we could certainly go back and do that. One thing I want to show you, we used multiple choice here. If we decided, oh, I don't really like how that looks, we can actually go back to it, click on this question. Let's say we wanted this to actually look like a drop down instead. We can choose that. Let's view it again. And now you can see that this is a drop down option. So you can change these on the fly if you chose to. So let's say we'll leave it as it is. We'll come back over here, and our third option here says Settings. Let's take a look at this. What we've got here is some general settings. So the first will require the user to actually sign in, if you wanted them to sign in to Google before they took their survey. These will allow the respondents to either edit their responses after they've submitted or see summary charts and responses of the data that's actually been collected. I'm not going to do any of those right now. The next says Presentation. You can show a progress bar. If it's multiple pages long, you might want to show them. You're on page 1 of 5. You can shuffle the question order if you don't want to make them always in that exact same order. You can show the link to submit another response. If this was maybe multiple people were going to be using the same computer, you might want to do that. Your confirmation message is what do they see after they've submitted their survey. So you might say, this says your responses have been recorded. And you might have something like, please let Mrs. So-and-so know that you're ready to move on to the next task, or whatever you would want them to see after they've hit submit on their survey. Now I told you that there's a way that these can be set up more for quizzes, and that's right here. You can make this a quiz. You can assign point values to questions and allow automatic grading. You can, there are a lot of options that would come along with this if we chose to make this a quiz. The respondents could see missed questions, correct answers, and point values. And this really opens it up to a whole array of options for teaching. So I want you to know that's there, and I encourage you to play around with this a little bit and see if this might be a good fit for you. But I wanted to just show you the core of what a survey might do for you. But again, there's a whole option on making these into quizzes that might be helpful for you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save. And we're going to go over here to the button that says, the last thing up here in the upper right-hand corner is Send. So we're going to go ahead and click this. And it's going to ask, how do you want to send this? And you have a lot of options here. You can send it via email, a link, or this option here says embed. We'll talk about embedding later in this semester. But this here is the one I want you to click on, and it says a link. This will give you a really long link that you can then share out to people to take your survey. You could put this link on a website, on a blog. You can send this out through an email. You could put it on if you have a classroom, like if you use ClassDojo or something through your school, you could release it through that. But here's a neat thing too. If you have a link, I can click here where it says shorten URL. It'll give me a URL that's short, and I'm going to copy it. I'll go ahead and cancel this for now, and I'm going to open up a brand new window and show you the survey that people will see in order to take this. So I'm going to paste in what I had just copied, and here's our survey. They can then submit a result. So I'm going to go ahead and take this survey and submit it so we can see what responses look like. Okay, you can see that I have my name, I chose a group, several exhibits including other, I gave it a 4, and I gave it some feedback, and I'm going to hit submit. I will see the confirmation that we saw on that one screen, and now I'm going to go back to my survey. Okay, now that I'm back on my survey, I want you to see that there's a box here that says responses 1. So I've had one person respond. And inside of here, I can see, this is just giving me a little tip about it, I can see a summary of everything here where this is what everybody has said in the entire class if you want to see it at a glance. Or I can look at individual folks and see what individual people said in their surveys. This is really helpful in looking at your data either from a big picture of the entire class or as individuals. The other thing you can do with this is you can choose to create a spreadsheet and view the data that way. And this is asking me if I want to create a spreadsheet. I'm going to say create. And this will create a spreadsheet for me and show the data within that spreadsheet. Okay, what I initially saw was that Firefox prevented this, so I'm going to choose to allow pop-ups. And what this is going to open for us is the survey responses in spreadsheet form. So I want to make sure you understand. Going back to our survey, there are 3 ways to look at our data. The first is the summary data, where we're seeing this in this really pretty kind of bar graphs, pie graphs kind of look. The second is looking at each individual person. Obviously, we only have one of one here. But we could scroll through and see what each individual person said. And the last is taking a look at this spreadsheet that we created by choosing to create a spreadsheet, and it opened up this for us, which looks a lot like Excel, and it looks at it more from a data-driven standpoint where you can see things and you could kind of sort results in different ways. So it really does lend itself to a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to view this. The other thing I want to show you is that this option right here, you can turn off accepting responses. So if you have a date where it says you can only accept responses until tomorrow at noon, you can actually turn those off if you're done accepting responses for your survey. So again, we created questions. We looked at some options up here, color options, some settings, and some previews, how to send it out to folks, and then how to look at the responses that you get back from folks under this response tab here. So this was an overview of forms. I encourage you to jump in there and practice both creating a survey and maybe a quiz as well. Good luck.